Hi, Dr. Pulsifer here with something about text adventures, MUDs. I added this to the class after the first person took it and suggested there needed to be something about text adventures. A MUD was and is a multi-user dungeon. It's something that originated very early in the computer age, so very early computer adventures and very early online as well, through the early internet before the World Wide Web and through bulletin board services. And many of the listeners won't even know what a bulletin board service was. It was an individual who set up his computer with a modem and attached it to a line full time so that people could dial in and do various things, almost all of them text things. An early form of email, but only to other people who were on the particular BBS, and the BBS could handle text adventures. Well, the MUDs in turn derive from D&D, which dates from 1974, and from the early text adventure games like Colossal Cave and Zork. On the other end of the scale, modern massively multiplayer online games derive from MUDs. MUDs were in effect a text version of an MMO that could only handle a relatively small number of players instead of tens of thousands. Well, these things originally were all text, and players gave commands by typing them in, typing things like go north or pick up wand. But there's a great variety of types. It's a very specialized taste, as you might guess, for people nowadays, although not so many years ago I had a student who was fascinated by a MUD that he was on, and he would play it whenever he could, including in class after he'd done his work. Well, any all-text game suffers from various disadvantages, and the main one is the players have very little information. You've certainly heard the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, in most MUDs there are no pictures. There are graphical MUDs, but usually a MUD is all text. The natural language command interface is subject to many vagaries as well. You've got to type the words in just right, or it won't do what you want it to do, which can be frustrating. So in one sense, it being all text makes these things easy to create, but the natural language interface makes them hard to create. Now I have to say I have very little experience with MUDs. I have a little more experience with text adventure games, but they were never particularly interesting to me. They were more frustrating than anything else because essentially they're puzzles, and I don't like puzzles. In any case, a designer has to focus on conveying as much information as he can in a few words, because that's the nature of the MUD. And if the player has limited information, then there are certain things you can and cannot do. One thing you have to focus on is avoiding the exploration by death syndrome. Don't have players discover something dangerous simply by stumbling onto it, like the undetectable pit that kills them. Players need to have some possibility that they can avoid the dangers. And when they have so little information, that possibility is quite limited. Of course, most players nowadays don't have the patience for text-only games, so you can assume that the people who are willing to play them are more patient than most in the age of instant gratification. You also have to recognize text adventures are much more puzzle than in any game, even other video games. So you can probably assume your audience likes puzzles. Some people would say MUDs are just a series of puzzles.